So as we slide into this fourth turn, and I took most of yesterday off doing something disgraceful, the Muslims are more or less free to act. Baibars has had to strip some of his castles to get enough force to operate. He's taken losses, etc. He didn't have particularly healthy units left, but other than that expenditure, he's, at least got a field army. The Christians' only field army here is what Bohemond can mount, and with his two leadership, he really can't do much on his own. He could prove to be an issue. He could come out, but he could end up getting destroyed with that. In that case, he's much better probably trying to hold Antioch, unless the Muslims spread their forces out, which in general doesn't tend to be a good tactic in this game. And I like that, in contrast to the old SPI crusades, where you spread out all over the place in order to avoid attrition. Well, here, because of the CDG dynamic, you have to keep your forces together in order to use them. And, you only have so many cards, so if you can keep everything stacked in one place, it kind of works better that way, although it's nice if you're sieging and facing a field army to have another field army to react with whenever needed, in case your opponent gets a siege that you can take out. The one thing the Christians did was they ransomed back their Armenian leader. They can't grab both their leaders at once. They paid a card for this. That might mean an additional castle falls or something, or maybe more than one, but they just can't operate without a leader. And that will help them if and when Louis comes in to be able to field more forces with him, enough to actually face Baibars. Alright, let's get it started. Well, the Muslims open things off with the card. In fact, it's not the one they got from the Christians. Crusade Diverted. As long as it's played within the first 5 turns, it cancels Louis' Crusade. That pretty much ends it. The Christians get 5 victory points for this card being played, just because their situation is so hopeless at this point. Now, that extra 5 victory points, remember the Christians usually have to just win on their victory conditions, so they're only 2 away from winning. The Muslims have all the points they need and are just going to grow in likelihood, but this forces the Christians to try and hold things off and maybe gain a couple more points in order to win, which gives them some hope, but not really much. Maybe if they can get the Mongols in. And with a good diplomacy card, it's hard to read these, but there's a little -2 there, even though the Muslims played the diplomatic advantage counter to try to avoid it. The Mongols are coming into this. Now let me make sure. I know I saw a failed diplomacy card. I think maybe it's in the diplomatic insult, which could have canceled this retroactively. But that's in the Christians' hands. So, well, we've actually got something of a game with the Mongols in play here. And especially with the Arab army way down here as opposed to up there, they're going to have some time to get together and try to come up with a force that can face the Muslims. You see both sides kind of delayed a little bit. The Christians played defensive factor increases. They had a fortifications bonus card to the valuable castles after the Muslims marched up and sieged and did not immediately get a surrender of Masyaf. And then finally the Mongols came crossing over to get into same operating radius as Bohemond's forces. Now, here's here's the problem. They can only take 2 Christians with them because the Mongol is the leader and they're different religions. So it's not like a normal crusading army or something where you can have a significant number of troops, you know, just sort of, well, a single unit per leader, but it still adds up in the wrong hands. Here, there's only going to be 2 Christian units, and you can see the Mongol stack isn't all that big. I think we're going to see the Muslims charge up and try to destroy either the Mongol stack or throw a siege on Antioch. Chances are the former, but the problem is in either case there could be an interception and a battle due to that. And that big battle is joined up here. The Christians managed to intercept using the magic ambush card, which not only makes an automatic interception but gives an additional +1 to the normal interception bonus. The Muslims had a Christian impetuosity. It worked out that both sides had a +2 to the die roll. Leadership for the Mongols is slightly better, or for the Muslims is slightly better. But the die rolls went in favor of the Christians. It ended up being a minor Christian victory, driving the Mongols, or the Muslims, back. Another interception, another battle. The Muslims get caught here this time. But this time they get a little luckier. Losses were still not enough to be a major battle in and of itself, but they were high enough to wipe out the Christian and Mongol army, and the Muslims marched forward. Castle surrendered and lay siege to Antioch. I think it's over. I really do. I'll certainly play out this turn. I don't know if it's worth playing out the rest of the game, though. There's several turns left where there's really nothing I think the Christians can possibly do to forestall this tide. It's just going to be worse and worse. I mean, I don't know. Anyway, we'll see what happens. Okay, after demobilization, this puts us up into turn 5. 3 more turns to go. I think I'll play out at least one more, just because I got lots of room on this video, but I don't know about the whole scenario. Anyway, the Muslim siege of Antioch disintegrated. Basically, they went home for the winter. Beyond that, nothing much interesting. We're going to see some replacement points. The Mongols here have a 4 replacement point, which gives them significant forces. It's not enough to face the Muslims right away, but maybe in a couple turns they can try to stem the tide again. I don't know, because the Muslims are just going to keep growing as well. Yeah, it just looks so hopeless without the crusade coming. Alright, kicking off this 5th turn, and I'm probably not going to do much video on it. I'm just going to come back with the results because this is so uninteresting at this point, but I kind of want to play things out. We got the new troops down. Now, because Baibars' army was withdrawn from the board, the Muslim army is kind of scattered. On the bright side, although the Christians are, for the Muslims, although the Christians are set up with a fair-sized stack in Antioch, the Mongols are almost useless at this point. They've lost their one leader, and unless they get something that can give them another, and I don't think there are any, they've got what amounts to maybe a small cavalry army that they could detach and use, but it can't coordinate with the Christians at all. Anyway, for the Christians, they so this is essentially no threat whatsoever. What I'm looking at, though, is Baibars, to pick up enough armies, has to really swing through Aleppo, and probably has to deal more with the Antioch side of things than trying to, say, deal with Jaffa. He can kind of ignore it, the Mongols, simply because their stinger's been drawn. For the Christians, they spent a card again and got Edward back this time. Leaders are just too important, and they have too few and none that are good in terms of being able to lead a lot of troops. So at least Edward can command the three underlings, conceivably. By the way, they bought Hugh back from the dead pile by spending not only the reinforcement that they had, but depopulating for replacement factors from there. I'm not sure that's legitimate, but what the hell. I'm not sure how much this is going to help, but the Kingdom of Jerusalem's useless to them without Hugh being available. Anyway, Edward could at most pretty much command the three leaders, each of which can command their own troops. Hugh could command three. Well, that's 2 Jerusalem and maybe 1 special unit. Bohemond can command 2. That's 1 Antioch and 1 special. And, well, conceivably the Armenian prince could command only Armenian troops. It's all he's allowed to because there's no other Eastern Orthodox. He can hold up to 6 of them, and there are that many, but he's never going to get that many on the board. He's going to have a couple of units under him. It's not really a force that's going to be able to face Baibars very easily, but without Mongol help, it's all the Christians have. They could just play this out trying to hold on to Antioch, which really is where things would actually be. This would be negotiating a peace, trying to reduce the losses here. And that's why I say the scenario is essentially over. With Louis not showing up, there's nothing going on. I'm going to go into the same detail I've been hitting with most of these turns, but after the Muslims moved into place, the Crusaders played Crusade Arrives, and it was canceled by a Muslim card. Crusade delayed, preventing the extra forces from showing. Well, after the Muslims moved up and they look like they're kind of taking out the Armenians, which are a big threat to them because of that good leader. Without restoring Armenia, the leader won't be available, I think. Well, the Christians are able to get a couple of Turkopol levies, and they've managed to get enough troops to siege Acre. And that's a real threat. You don't want Acre to fall here. And Baibars reacted to that threat. First, I did a combined action, moving a Cav army into place, which is now down at Jerusalem. That was driven off at no losses by the Crusaders. They had the slight advantage there. Then Baibars took the second move to move down into range here. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 to here. And then after a siege action, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, hit Acre, destroyed the crusading army of Jerusalem, and killed Hugh again. Hugh the Second or whatever. And now chances are Jaffa's going to fall before we move our way back into place. Things went very badly in the siege of Jaffa. They drew a random draw. It ended up failing, raising the resistance factor, making everything kind of ugly, and giving the Christians an extra card so they could run to Aleppo, capture it. And they also grabbed Gaston afterwards, now that the penalty's gone. So they're up to 29 Crusader points, which I think is enough that if they could hold it, they can win. Nah, they need to get up to 32, it looks like, for this one. Yeah, they're not going to get there without some luck. And they have not dropped the Muslim points below 43, which is their victory condition area. Whether or not the Muslims want to continue this siege of Jaffa is hard to tell. There are much, much more important places to be. But taking that out means Jerusalem can no longer produce stuff here. It requires naval moves to start threatening what's in the south here. And that would be advantageous. So to some degree, Jaffa becomes very important as the sole remaining space down there that's threatening them. So as we push into turn 6, the siege of Jaffa continues, unpleasant as it is, with that big number on it. I may withdraw and build back and make another attack on it. There's not really any harm to that. It's not worth any points, so there's no chance of even losing the diplomatic counter off of it. Speaking of which, I'm not sure I own that after Aleppo. I do not. That's now in the Christian hands again. But yeah, this is an unpleasant turn of events that the Muslims probably want to fix, even if, you know, they don't win, or they're not going to lose, end up not winning the game because of it. It's kind of humiliating. All right, this one's going up, and one more video for the last 2 turns, I guess. Kind of resigned to continuing. I don't really bail out of games very often. Even something like this, where I don't think there's any chance for the Christians.